All right, go ahead.
Well, we're getting ready for the call, anyone who's just joining us, and we were talking about some of the ways our strengths show up, and here's mine in research. I'm digging into some old articles from 1952, trying to source where the actual formula came from. Anyway, I'm going to stop because we have stuff to talk about that's not quite so intensely academic.
We got a lot to cover.
Say, that is like seriously nerdy.
Well,
Hashtag input for sure.
Oh, yes. And hopefully we'll be able to distill it and bring it back in a way that's
relevant.
Interesting. Yes, relevant. Good word.
You said interesting. No, it doesn't matter if it's interesting. It has to be relevant.
Okay. I think it could be both. But
it could be, it should be both.
You are getting some insight into how some of our work conversations sound, you guys.
Yes. Felinda always likes to start debates with me. No.
Sure.
It's probably 50-50, but in my mind, she usually starts them. All right, go on. Carry on. You want me to share this? You want me to start sharing slides?
Yes. So welcome, everybody. We're at week 6 already. It's crazy how fast this is going. How is everyone tonight? Yeah, good. Rhonda's good. Adam, Leanne, Susan. Can't see Kathy. Good. All right. So I know a few people are traveling and not going to be on the call tonight. They already let me know, so we will miss them, but I know they'll be seeing this video. So the work for the topic for tonight that we're going to cover, the videos that you watched, were Facilitating Observe. We're going to cover the enablers worksheet that you did, hopefully, and the influencing themes. So first, I want to ask, Adam's already recording, so we're good there. I just want to ask if there are any general questions about the facilitate phase of observe. Is anything not clear in the video or you'd like us to expound on a little bit? And if you think of it later, you can always bring it up. But I just want to put that in there because we don't, in these calls, really go into that content again, just in the nature of time. And I don't want to, you know, leave out or make it feel like we can't talk about that. We absolutely can if anyone has any questions. But we don't go into that content because you already saw it. You saw it once in the participant version and once in the facilitate version. So, you know, you've had exposure, but absolutely bring up any questions if you have them.
I'm going through the slides that Felinda's referencing. So, you know, we start off by kind of highlighting, observe, and then this is kind of like some thoughts that I shared. Now you can add your own thoughts, like this 2,500 to 3,300 thoughts per hour figure. That's how many. That's the estimate that I read on how many thoughts per hour people have. Well, I put that in because I thought it was interesting. I thought, wow, well, that explains why it's so hard to observe our themes. They move pretty fast. So I added that. It was not like, it's not sanctioned by the strength overlords to use this or not. So I encourage you, this is just my input theme, you know, being like, yeah, let's throw that in. So I want to encourage you that you can change this up. It's however you want to explain observe.
Absolutely. And that's why you have access to the PowerPoints in the PowerPoint form, of course, so that you can use them in terms just like this, but you can edit them to suit how you want to present. You can add, of course, the material that you've already experienced if you are experienced in this work. So we want to make sure you have what you need. I think let's go ahead and talk about the worksheet. I've seen one.
Well, I want to, if you don't mind, Felinda, real quick, I want to just see, now that I've kind of flashed this up in front of you to refresh you on what we're talking about here, I want to kind of reiterate Felinda's question. Do you have any feedback or thoughts, questions, insights, hesitations, anything about facilitating this with either a coaching client or a group that you're training or facilitating with?
Adam, can I ask a question? It's Jim here.
Yeah.
Regarding the observe part of it,
I'm on my call.
would the what do you call it, the alignment sheet, would that be part of it that you'd introduce in the observe, or would you have done that already in the connect?
Oh, great question. Yeah, that's that alignment piece, that alignment worksheet, and what Jim, I think the one you're talking about is where you kind of look at different activities you've performed throughout the day.
Yeah.
And then rate them. You give it an alignment score of 0 to 100, and then why? How did your themes play a role in that? I think that it's such a great observation activity. Absolutely. And I personally think that there's enough to do inside of the connect phase that, you know, if you were doing the mnemonic for connect, and then maybe you did the 4 domains worksheet where you looked at how your themes fit into each of the 4 domains of thinking, relating, influencing, what's the 4th one? I'm just kidding. Executing. I just pretend like I never remember it because it doesn't exist to me. But, you know, like, you know, so you can move the worksheets around to what suits your style and what you want to emphasize under each section. So yes, you have flexibility there too. I don't want to mess people up by being like, oh, you can do whatever you want and anywhere you want. But you kind of can if you really can justify it and make sense of it.
Yeah, I'll actually add to that answer. We used to do it later in the workshop. We put it in Observe, we put it in Connect. I tend to do the alignment meter as early as possible. And if it's with a group and I can get them to do it before they show up in the room, I feel like it's something that they've already had some experience with. They don't have to understand their talents fully to begin that experience. And it kind of gets them showing up with, you know, them having already thought about some of their actual physical activities and what that looks like, and they start carrying that alignment meter around in their head. So I do try to get them to do it before a workshop if it's at all possible. Or if it's a coaching client, that's one of the first things I do. And so now I personally move it all the way up into, you know, where you talk about raw talent, or even before.
The alignment meter. That's great.
Alignment meter worksheet. Because I do also feel like, Adam, you know, there's already a lot to do. You already have your, and I personally move the 4 domains down. But I think, again, that one can go anywhere. So the way I tend to do it is alignment meter in raw talent, or even before, and talk about it in raw talent, because I feel like it really sets the stage for all of the other ones. And I personally reference it back to that personal experience they had. And then I do mnemonic in Connect and the enablers in Observe. So I try to do 1 activity per section, and that's just the way I've structured it. But just as Adam said, you can adjust it.
It's really great. I love that. I love the different flexibility, and yeah. And I also appreciate you using the hand raise. I don't know how to do that. How do you use the hand raise icon for Zoom?
Go to participants, and then there's a thing there.
Okay.
So participant.
Oh, how nice. Thanks.
What it was before. Yeah. Little raise hand.
That's great.
I'm still not seeing it, but that's okay.
If you click on the bottom under participants, there's a menu bar. It might look a little different since you're the host.
Right. It's all good. It's fine. I think it's a great feature. I didn't really know that we had, and maybe we didn't have it. Maybe it's a new feature, but it's great. So cool.
Yes, and I'm not seeing those pop up. So Adam, if you do see those, can you make sure to catch?
Yeah, I will. I dig those.
That too.
Yeah.
Okay. Anybody else have any questions? Oh, all right.
Were you guys feeling it when I was talking about, okay, how you would have feelings that were different if you had the achiever theme versus if you had the ideation theme. I mean, and some people might have both, but you know, they would produce different things would trigger different emotional responses based on these themes. Does that make sense? Like something that would feel good to ideation might not feel good to achiever at all. Like if I said, hey, let's sit down and let's stop work for a minute and let's really come up with some creative names or acronyms for something, you know? And it'd be like, okay, wake me up when you're ready to do something important, you know? So, and the achiever is like, what do I got to do next? And achievers, man, I know some people that are just some world-class achievers, and I have, it's nothing personal, but it's like, geez, would you quit being a human doing and be a human being, you know? Like, they're always like, do. I'm like, God, like, take some time out to be a person.
I think that is how they feel.
I know. I'm just saying how it's different. I'm not attacking them. I marvel at it. I know it sounds, I guess that sounds like I was attacking them. I'm not. But it's like different
it's a different
feelings.
perspective.
Yeah. And then the thoughts. Yeah, the thoughts we have are very different based on our themes. And then the way we act, which for me is like the hardest one to explain, how our actions are triggered by our themes, but that's completely there as well. I mean, it's not that hard of a leap. It's just hard to think of examples right off the top of my head. All right, so I'll do it. I don't want to make you guys talk about it. If you,
Well, I just wanted to add this one thing, and then Leanne, I see her waving, but you just said triggered, and that's the truth of the matter, is that we're triggered into those feelings, triggered into those thoughts, or triggered into that behavior.
right on.
It's a subconscious pattern we don't even know. It's as close as the tip of our nose.
That's great, Rhonda. I'm so glad you said that, because the truth is that's how it works. That's why, you know, Gallup uses, when they define a talent, they define it as a pattern of thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. And for me, I always think of it as feelings, thoughts, and behaviors, because I think that's the sequence of how fast each one is. Feelings are first. Feelings are the fastest. Feelings are emotional responses to things that bypass our thought circuit, you know, and then come our thoughts. Our thoughts then catch up afterwards and go, well, what did that feeling mean? Oh, I didn't even know I had a feeling. So the thoughts come in next, and then the behaviors kind of will follow. And I guess there's some instances where there's behaviors that are just reflexive, but for the most part, I think if we did slow motion replays, it goes feelings, thoughts, behaviors. That's just my thought.
Well, I think you're absolutely right if you are on automatic pilot. I do believe that with intention, that the proper way to move through is thoughts, feelings, and behavior. That is the way of intention as opposed to reaction. Okay. If you're going feelings, thoughts, and behavior, then it's absolutely a physical, meaning body, physical reaction in your body that's causing your thinking to go down that same old track you've been going down for 82 years or however long, you know, and that's why that behavior keeps showing up, is because it is backwards, but with intention. If you are able to stop yourself to think it through, feelings may be there.
That's the point. Yeah,
you can manage them. That's where the management. That's right. The point of management, is to not allow those feelings to direct your thoughts, but instead interrupt them.
Well, that's why I think that. So I think we'll agree then, because when I say this, is that a thought would be, wait, what feeling am I having? Why am I having that feeling? See,
but the feeling still came first.
The feeling came first, right? Because that's how we operate. That's how we navigate the world. We've so discounted feelings, but it's really important. I believe we need to really rethink this. And like I have this little sticky note on my desk. I've had it for like the last week there, because it's this feeling called limerence. I was looking up emotions, and I was like, I didn't know there was such a thing as this feeling. And then there's another one I came across. This one's a fun one, and I'm like, oh, I felt that one. It's been a while, but I felt it. You should look it up. It's a great feeling to have. And then there's another one that's not so great called, the pronunciation is saudade, Saudade. And you should look up this one. And this is not a pleasant emotion to have, but I've definitely had it. And it's like learning the vocabulary of emotions will help us name our emotions. And that's what our thoughts should be about. We got to move on. But I want to say, there, this trifecta of feelings, thoughts, behaviors is really, really, really important. And we don't ever hardly get into it with clients, but we really should, because that's the emotional intelligence aspect of this strength stuff. Very, very powerful stuff. All right. So, Leanne, you had a comment, and then we'll move on. So go for it.
Can you guys hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay. So I was going to give you a shout out before you started talking about, those achievers and their human doing, since I lead with achiever, but I'll let that slide. Wasn't offended at all by my lack of human being, Adam. I'm just giving you grief. So
yes, please pile it on.
What I did really appreciate, especially from my achiever lens, was when you were looking at this slide in particular, and you spoke about how the high standards we have associated, that is our bias that is often associated with how we view the world, right? And that's a great way to articulate to people maybe why there's discourse in relationships or discourse in organizations. It is just that expectation of, as someone who has a high achiever specifically, I can get frustrated with people that don't work at the level or the stamina that I do, because I literally don't understand how you can't do it until I became enlightened by, looking out the window and observing other people and seeing there's great ways to be productive. So I really I wrote that down because it really is important when we talk to clients or when we talk to groups that we honor their lens, but we acknowledge that sometimes that can be the discourse in the relationships we have. So
it's what's happening. Like if you start getting into couples coaching around strengths-based couples, work or family work, this is absolutely what's happening all the time within. Like you could just work miracles with a family or a couple if they just quieted down the way they beat each other up with their standards and be like, oh, right, I'm not supposed to expect you to be that way. That's what I'm supposed to bring to the relationship. And I'm supposed to see the value in, oh, you bring this, other quality to the relationship, right? So I'm so glad that we focused on that. It's a really wonderful point, and where you could just do a whole lot of good in the world just from that alone. So I'm going to turn it back over to Felinda, who's keeping us on track, which is something I appreciate.
Well, I totally agree. I mean, that's one of my favorite things about this tool, is to see that pain point or that frustration point in those relationships, especially like those deep personal ones that mean so much, go from like frustration to appreciation and celebration. And I just love seeing that. And that's exactly, you hit it right on the head. So let's move into our enablers worksheet. So I want to talk about the experience of doing this and some points of application. So does anyone feel comfortable sharing an example of one of their themes and how they wrote this out? Thanks, Adam.
Okay, I'm sorry. Which one are we on?
We're on and I think you're on it.
Great.
You can be there. I also put it up a little higher too. So the enablers worksheet. It's a really nice exercise when you're doing the observe section, because you'll see if you've had experience with this, you'll know people jump right to the ruts. They're like, oh, how does this theme get my way? How does that? it is so important to emphasize, re-emphasize, and do everything in your power to help a person understand the really positive ways their top 5 serves them. We're just such a culture of focusing on the weakness fixing, and if we do anything else, it's making that shift. And it's a hard shift to make sometimes because they are so natural. They don't show up in clear ways. And so that's where, if you can, yes, the ruts is important. Yes, interrupting is important. But that's why we do this first. And that's why we try to spend a lot of time driving home that if you can identify what makes you thrive, which isn't usually that obvious, and tie it to activities, you can really begin to make major shifts in your life that really make you happier and usually more energetic for the people around you. So this is a great worksheet to do that, but also not just doing the worksheet, talking about why. So that's why we have that application to you, so that people can really start identifying the purpose and how it shows up, then to create, some real examples, and then how that they're going to take that to the next level. And that next level column gives them something to kind of think toward or act toward or develop toward, right? And it's actually something we get more into once we get into the nuance or the strength thinking, but it just shows them that, hey, this is a process. This development is continual and lifelong. And if you can identify, like, hey, this is how this really shows up for me, like intellection today, I enjoy doing that deep dive and then distilling that information and hopefully making it clear so that it's useful. That's a really good way my intellection shows up and I think helps people. I want it to, and I can apply that to relationships, and I can apply it to influencing. I can apply it to executing. And so then I could look at my next level of how could I be even more present and powerful in that. So that was my little mini lecture there. So does anyone want to talk through their examples? If not, I might put someone on the spot.
Linda, I can talk about one of them.
Good, I don't have to put you on the spot.
Were you going to do that?
Yes.
Oh, you're funny. I have deliberative as number 5, and I'm a very busy person. I don't have a lot of extra spare time, so I actually plan like my hours of my day. Like my whole day is planned, and I'm taking prerequisite classes to go to graduate school. I will have all my prereqs done in spring, and I'll hopefully be able to apply and, fingers crossed, get accepted into the program I want for fall. I have planned out my schedule. Deliberative helps me with this because I have planned out my schedule and when to take classes and how to work them into 3 jobs. And, now I'm a little behind. Fair to say that sometimes I cannot accomplish everything I try, but I'm only a semester behind my goals. So deliberative has helped me plan out everything. And then, of course, my next level would be to get into grad school, and then I can do it again. So hopefully I'll be able to do grad school in 2 years if I can stay on my schedule.
I'd like to also add to that.
I overschedule, so sometimes I can't always make my goals.
Well, but I'll say, so deliberative, Diane works with me primarily, but with us, and she brings the deliberative talent to our team. Deliberative is 34 for me. Diane will attest that there are some things I don't want to overlook. I don't mean to overlook, but only someone high in deliberative is going to truly catch them the way I need them to be caught, that it's just a blind spot for me. So, she's talking about being overscheduled, but I will tell you, she's the person that keeps some of those practical pieces of our work running. And it's very comforting to know that for me. So it's, there's a good example of strength drafting, or, kind of how a talent would play into a team. that even as busy as she is, her deliberative is careful about making sure she doesn't, miss some of those important pieces. And it's a great, it's great for me. It's great for Adam. So thank you for sharing, Diane. Anyone else? Did anyone do the exercise? Let's start there. Rhonda?
I'll share mine.
Okay, thank you.
So I just really looked at I looked at two. So ideation allows me to generate fresh perspectives and new ideas and out-of-the-box thinking. And an example would be brainstorming with Adam. Because we bring different possibilities and looking at different things. And then the next level is to force Adam into declaring a method.
Yes.
Oh, yeah. Well, she must have just done her homework like within the last 20 minutes because we just had this conversation just played out
Did.
an hour and a half ago.
That's exactly what happened. I did not win. I want everybody to know that I was not able to.
I don't know. I think there's a little retribution in this.
I did not effectively woo him. Actually, my woo allows me to break the ice easily with new people, and I'm always seeking to make connections and to connect networks. Building people networks is what I do. And I think the next level would be to do it intentionally and just with greater intention, loaning my talents out.
I think you're definitely doing it. Just in our calls this week, there's a quality of your ideation that overlays so lovely with woo, but I was really seeing connectedness show up. And
isn't that funny? Because that's my number 12.
Is it really? So maybe I'm thinking of a different combo, but there was just this really lovely visioning quality to Rhonda's ideation on our calls this week in a way that was uplifting, celebratory. I think, woo is definitely showing up, the kind of like, we are going to celebrate, as in, really be creating an event that will make space for celebration and inspiration.
Right.
That's not really exactly how my ideation shows up or how Adam shows up. So it was really fun to be in those conversations and hear that. And I think that is a fun next level. I think you already do it, and it'll be fun to see how it plays out.
Well, it's making it bigger. My maximizer comes in to make something bigger than what you if you come to me with an idea, you better be ready for it to get about 10 times bigger.
I love. It's really fun.
I don't know, it's just something automatic that I do is see something just a little bigger. And sometimes that can overwhelm people because it's not at all what they were wanting. And all of a sudden I blew it up and now they're like,
I find it this week, I'll just use this example. We're planning something coming up, and there's a visioning quality to it. There's kind of like sky's the limit in the terms of like the scope. I don't know. It's an exciting and energetic quality for sure.
I wonder, I'm thinking my futuristic is coming up because when I literally like see people in the room, like when Adam will say, what if we do 4 rooms? All of a sudden I see 4 rooms.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So that's kind of how, I don't know, that vision piece to me is futuristic. So it might be hearing an idea and then my futuristic coming up and going, I see it.
It's clear as day.
Because oftentimes that's what, and especially for my activator will not move if I don't know where I'm going.
Mm-hmm.
If I don't have complete clarity, it is like deliberative. It's a break.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I think that's really a good point to say that, there are certain conditions that need to be met to activate a theme. And sometimes they're the same, but they show up in different ways. And if you are seeing, especially like if you're looking, if I'm if I were talking with Rhonda and I don't see her eyes light up and her being like, I'm gonna go do this, this, and this, I know activator is not activated. And so I have to figure out, well, what am I leaving out? What am I not, there are triggers here too, right? Well, that trigger is going to be so different for deliberative, but it's going to essentially be the same thing. I've got to meet those conditions. And
isn't that funny? I would never associate activator acting like a deliberative. In fact, they typically, Jim Brophy, are considerably contrary.
Well, I think that they need to know that the risk assessment has been considered, and they need and then activator needs to know there's action to be taken. Strategic needs to understand the big picture. Arranger needs to be time, to jump into action, or some clarity around the scope. So I always think this is a fun part of the conversation, because a lot of your next level pieces to get and stay into that thriving category of the alignment meter, once you really do thoroughly observe and understand how these serve you, you can start looking at what are the conditions that need to be met for those to be even more powerful. And that's where that next level column can be a lot of fun.
We need to probably include that language. What conditions would make your theme more powerful? Good job, Felinda.
Thank you, Adam.
That's how content gets created.
In Talent to Strength land. All right, so I do want to point out this Uber enabler match. And Jim, can I put you on the spot here? Because you created this idea for us and you kind of helped us see, like, we have this on the routes. Why didn't we put this on the enablers? And I thought this was just such a lovely version. And like I said, we are going to add this to when we do our sort of our next level wave of upgrades on the worksheets. But this is Jim's example of his Uber enabler. A clear plan, his objective plus focus plus support of the talents and activation equals powerful. I really like this. So thank you, Jim, for contributing that.
I have a question about that.
Mm-hmm.
Am I muted? No, I'm good. So what does that mean, supportive talents activation? Are you asking to be activated? I'm right
sure.
here.
Yeah, because I recognize that I need some complementary talents to get going.
Gotcha.
They've got a plan, very clear objectives, going to focus on it, but I need some help from people with activator talent. Do you know anyone who might have that?
Yes.
I'll tell you, when I was on that call with Rhonda, I was like, deliberative's like 16 for me. It's not super high, but I was like, hold on. I was like gripping the sides of the boat. I'm getting, my knuckles are turning white. I'm like, slow down, crazy lady, like.
I did not jump anywhere.
No, you did. What you were doing probably felt like slow motion to you. But for me, I'm like, it's too fast. It's too much.
I was just, y'all, I got to tell you, you know how I kept Adam in line? Mm-hmm. It was with the POM.
That's right. She used my own method against my own weapons against me. They were powerful. It worked. It worked.
I was like, hold on. You're back to outcomes again.
Yes, and that's actually a great point right there. You can use the POM as in your, like, if Jim has a clear plan and he's got the focus and everything seems in line, but he's kind of like, I know I need this this something or other. A method could be reaching out for very specific kinds of support. And if you can identify those people or those sources of support, that's a method that you can pull in to reach your outcomes.
I mean, why wouldn't you hire a coach to just be your ignition coach? If you're like, oh, what kind of coach should I hire? Hire somebody who's like, I am going to get you off the blocks. I am going to shoot a starter gun in your face. I am like, we're going to go. And you're like, oh my gosh, I need that. Then that's the coach for you. You're probably going to hate that coach's guts,
I'll take you on, Jim Brophy.
Well,
And you
that's-
won't hate me ever. No, I'm teasing. Anyway, no, here's what I was thinking though on the POM is this is how it occurs to me in matching up these two, which I think can be important if you're working on it. Like, how are you? I see another application of this. Identify the purpose of each theme as it applies to the project specifically.
yes.
What purpose does this talent serve to the project?
Yes.
We actually do
Okay.
that in our strength thinking worksheet and formula. So
Okay.
that will come in the mature talent phase where we kind of address like where that lives and how you can really look at that. But the shorthand version would absolutely be that. If you're looking at this next level and I would say if you start to feel stuck, go back to this and say, all right, like how do I get back here? What are the conditions that usually trigger me?
Right.
In this place, not the stuck place or the rut place.
Well, so it seems to me, if I just look at what he said, Jim, I'm talking about you again, under the Uber example, if you look at the clear plan objective, that to me is the P. He's clear on the purpose and the objective and then the focus is on what he wants the outcome maybe to be. Or maybe clear plan, objective, and focus are both PO
Kind of those big,
related.
And
then where I see that you have the possibility of help needed is in that support of talents and activation. And that becomes a method. How are you going to get who is there to support you? That becomes checking a box. I need to find somebody to kick my butt. Okay, check. I need to do. And so you start building, I need the support. Which talents do you need the support of?
And by the
Supporting
way,
talents.
Rhonda, if you go to a coach and let's say it's Rhonda, and the coach is like, well, how am I going to help jumpstart you? I'd be like, oh, I got to give this guy clear deadline and objective. That's because that'll harness his focus. I got to give him, fact-based reasons for why that goal makes sense and it's important to do it. I could provide some background about, that, and I could talk about how doing so would actually fix a problem he's having. And I mean, I'd be harnessing a lot of natural qualities that would get a person with these themes, in this case, Jim, but generally a person with these themes, it would get that person moving forward. That's how you coach using this tool.
And I would like to point out focus very specifically wrote a target or a goal, where someone else, like me with ideation, probably would have written targets and goals.
Good point.
So that's something, as you as the coach or facilitator, as you're looking at those and you're starting to speak the language of a person's themes, as you learn more and more about them, those little nuances can be very, very powerful. And so, for example, if I were working with someone with focus, and I do happen to work with someone on our team with focus, actually 2 people have focus on our team, thank goodness, I can easily overwhelm with all the things we're going to do. And we have to do those things. That's just part of who we are. But I know, and they help me narrow it down and stay focused. And focus isn't just tunnel vision, but they also help with the process, that process piece of like, here's what we do to get this and this and this and this taken care of. So just kind of wanted to throw that in there as we're looking at that. But I want to take us on to our influencing themes. So we do get a good discussion of some of those in tonight too. And we will stay a little bit after if we want to talk more. Thank you everybody who shared examples. I really do appreciate that. I know, I know that's always
nice transition. That was a good transition, Flynn. Well done. Yeah, we're good.
So here we are, influencing themes. We actually did start talking about them a little bit earlier, but does anybody have a question about one, or after you watch the video, is there something like a little more clarity or you'd like to comment on? I'd also like to pull up our team grid, Adam, on slide 3 so we can see who's in the room with our influencing themes. Of course, not everybody's here right now today, but some of us are. So, any questions?
We got 4 activators jumping out of their seats, wanting to do stuff. We got woos. We got woos all over the place. Got a little competition scattered in, and some little significance.
Maximizers.
Yeah, we have a nice, good representation. We don't have command here, but that's fine. And what else? I don't know. But yeah, where do you want to go? What do you want to do? First of all, I want to maybe say, do you guys, anybody have any questions about why these icons are represented the way they are?
Can I make a comment, Adam?
You may, yes.
About the general influencing themes. They're generally towards the bottom of my 34. And in the past, these are the people I had the biggest problem with. I just had just a natural gut reaction of disdain. When someone comes at me with loads of woo, self-assurance, command, or communication. So the thing that I found with the with StrengthsFinder is really it's really helped me appreciate how these themes are brilliant, and particularly how I can work with them. Whereas in the past, I'd just rather be anywhere else rather than someone with most of these themes.
Isn't that great? I mean, just that alone makes the whole StrengthsFinder tool valuable. Just the whole thing of like, oh, I hate that quality, to, oh, that quality that is really rubbing me the wrong way is your command, but there's also some value in it too, can fundamentally reorient us in our relationships with people. And that's a good thing, not a bad thing.
Absolutely.
And I'd like to say, I was actually talking to somebody about this morning, and she'll be watching this call, this video, so she'll know who she is. But we were talking about the influencing themes, and we talked a little bit about this last week, about how, again, generalization, take it or leave it, but how the relationship themes can sometimes be perhaps a little quieter, or a little, and the influencing themes are sometimes a little bit more extroverted or more verbal, right? So it can, especially communication. I mean, but really you will hear, these themes bring a lot of energy and sometimes a lot of extroversion. Now, again, tempered with what else, is there, and each individual shows up a little differently. But if we're generalizing, someone with one of these very high, they're drivers usually. They have a lot of energy behind them, and so especially to the more careful kind of, some like deliberative theme, or some of the more kind of internal themes, this can come on very, very strong and be almost the opposite of operating systems. And so, just as Jim pointed out, like to understand that and kind of say, oh, there's the value. And then the influencing themes, vice versa, sometimes it can take some time. Like they have to kind of understand and appreciate what those quieter themes, or those more, introverted, or even just generally kind of less obvious themes, perhaps, what they bring and what value they add. And you will see that if somebody is not mature and has a lot of high influencing themes, they verbalize a lot, and they sometimes have a hard time understanding that quieter operating system. And so when they do, you'll see that mature, and it's really lovely. And you'll see it in the, when people have mature versions of these, they're pretty amazing. But just to kind of bring that out, it was kind of a fun topic we were talking about earlier. But
yeah, good. Now let me bring Leanne into the conversation with her lovely hand raise tool.
Yay!
Nice.
Yeah, I think, and I'm just going to marry your and Jim's point and give an example of when I've used this in coaching managers too, because I've heard this verbalized in ways before I even knew it was associated mostly with these influencing themes. But I had a manager once that said, you know, my employee just sucks the air out of the room the moment she comes in. And she had command, activator, and maximizer like in her dominant themes. And she was a force, right? And so when we're coaching people, you know, I had an opportunity to coach both of them, and both of them had places where they could appreciate each other a little bit differently with those quieter themes. Her manager was a relationship-based, very quiet, and kind of manages from behind the scenes. But, you know, it's interesting how you hear those blind spots or those biases come out. And I think there is a lot of verbalization of, you know, these themes can find their way into a negative space quicker or just get themselves in trouble. And, you know, communication is 33 for me, but I have activator and woo and significance in my dominant theme. So I can say wrong words on a regular basis and say them with very much excitement. And so, you know, some of that conversation with these themes really can quiet your other themes. And once you're able to nuance them and figure out where to use them effectively, they're really, really interesting. But these are fun to hear people talk about, I think, from a coach's lens when they're describing them or talking the impact in the room. You can really hear it with things like they just suck the air out of the room. That's scary. And that hurts their feelings too, because that's not what you wanted to do, right? So it's interesting.
It's so true.
Hurts my feelings.
No, it's
but I
why
suck the life out of the room.
it's
Seriously?
a really it
Y'all
brings.
need a nap after being around me. I do know this. Go ahead, Adam. I'm sorry.
I can't remember what I was going to say.
You do.
I don't. I lost it. I forgot.
So I do have a question about self-assurance.
Mm-hmm.
And believe it or not, y'all, competition is really low for me, number 26. I could care less if I win, although my maximizer wants to win. And sometimes I see my maximizer coming out of the gate like I'm going to compete because I want to win. And then I'm like, what am I thinking? And I turn that off. But the self-assurance, my experience of self-assurance is not, I am not ready to follow someone with self-assurance. And yet they are influencers.
Do you want to say a little more about that, Rhonda?
Yes, this is one that feels arrogant.
Oh, you don't like them?
No, I'm telling you how they occur to me.
Is this your experience with certain individuals?
Well, it's experience with many, many self-assurance over the time.
Well, that's what and
yes, it's almost all. I mean, I have found, I'm just trying to think, like I had an amazing interview the other day, a call the other day with a lady with self-assurance number 5. She was amazingly mature in her self-assurance.
And how did that show up for her?
It showed up, actually, it was, you know, Leanne, you said something at when we were in Utah that I did not realize that I do. Did not. That they put me on the spot and asked me about my experience in talking to people about SOAR, and I went on about this whole thing, and Leanne says, that is not what she does. And she said that what I do, which was amazing, Leanne, because I didn't know, right? It was a blind spot for me. Here I am thinking I'm so slick on what I'm sharing with people. Leanne's like, that ain't it. So I find out what people's talents are, and I speak their language immediately. And I'll say, your achiever will really appreciate this because you get to move whatever it is, you know? So I think that's one of the things that I have been able to do in my coaching and in my service to people is really understand how to speak to their self-assurance. Like, for example, I said to this lady, I understand that she had learner also. I said, I understand when you haven't learned enough, you still have that burning in your belly. And as soon as that's clear, you're ready to go. She's like, how'd you know that? So that's how I was able to speak to her. But as a general rule, when I see people out in public that have self-assurance, you know, it's the immature kind, I guess.
And maybe that's maybe when it's kind of bumping up against, how you feel about them, maybe you're seeing the immature expression of it more.
Maybe it's number 21 for me. So
For
it's
me-
in my blind spot.
And for me, I experience self-assurance very differently. I find there's no guesses with them. I don't have to guess how they're feeling. I don't have to guess where they stand. I experience
Command too, though.
Well, command, belief. There's a few that are like that, but for me, and I also don't have to. What's the word I'm thinking? They are very confident in their judgment, decisions, and capabilities. That doesn't always mean that their judgment, decisions, and capabilities are correct. So that can be a factor of the immature piece. But they're confident, and so you usually know where they're going because you can kind of
Right. I think it's the emboldens others to be self-confident. I have not found that. That's just my experience of, self-assurance. I'm not following them.
I think that maybe that's also that you have some nonconformist in you.
Could be.
But I think that the way they do that is not the way that, say, an includer would do that. Like, the emboldens others to be self-confident is more by example, in my experience. Like, that person is over there just doing their thing, as open and as clear as they want to be. They don't take any of this or that. I think that self-assurance, like activator, because activator doesn't necessarily get anyone to go along with them.
No, we're just gone. And if you're coming,
right? And it's by example. So to me, activator is by example, but it's a kind of independent operator. I feel the same way about self-assurance, that it's more of an independent operator, and their example is what kind of says, oh, this is a culture where I too can, really. But
here's the issue is they don't really care whether they influence you or not.
True, but that's what I mean.
Whereas activators want to influence.
This is just an example of where the categories break down for me. It's just one example. Like I would take belief and I'd say that's more of an influencing theme, and then put activator over in executing. But it doesn't. I mean, but there's just limits to what you can, what you do with these 4 domains. But going theme by theme is what I think is really important. And I think for most of these, because I wrote these, this is not Gallup edited them, and so we now have the Gallup official approved statements. So they might. I don't know if I pulled up the document generator, I could look at what.
I can pull it up for you, Adam, while you're talking.
Like stays on course through distractions and obstacles. To me, that's focus.
Yeah, but of course, we've captured that under focus for sure. But self-assurance is also it's true of self-assurance. I mean, they really do set out something for themselves, and they do stay the course, and they don't back down. They don't get intimidated. They shoot for stretch goals. When they set a goal for themselves, it's can I do it kind of goals. I wish I had more of that. My whole internal talk is, how can I keep from having to stretch myself outside of my comfort zone? So it really does fit. But you're right. It's true for focus too, no doubt about it. But
I just wondered if you knew the history of how it wound up as an influencing talent, because I would have put it under an executing talent personally.
Yeah, I know that. I mean, I think I know the history. Is this guy, Barry Conchie, said, here's 4 ways that people lead. I love StrengthsFinder. There's 34 themes. How can I put them into 4 reasonable categories? Maybe if there's science behind it, I want to see it. But I want to just say something real quick, and then Felinda, I want to get to Felinda's pulled up this thing on this. I want to say that every theme can project the best part of that theme to other people if they learn to use it that way. So absolutely, someone with a mature self-assurance will teach other people how to not be afraid as well, how to not have unnecessary fears, unnecessary questions. And I think, we could say that for every theme is, maybe woo can make other people start to be more socially connective. If they're
you come
using
with me, I will do that for you.
Right. And so Anyway, let's go back to Felinda. Did you dig up what Gallup's edited version of this was?
I did, but actually they left that one the same.
Ha!
So
That's hilarious. That is really funny. Did not expect that.
it's not terribly different.
Or what if my strategic really did know that they didn't change that? But I'm not. Look, I'm not that good, but I wish I would have. Go ahead, Felinda.
I'll read what they have. It's not that different. It's just slight word changes. So, and actually that's most of what we ended up with the whole Gallup edits, is just some nuances, which was nice. Has confidence in their judgment, decisions, and capabilities. That's what they're.
So one of the big things Gallup did, and I really appreciate this, is they made sure every statement almost, there's a couple of exceptions, but almost every statement begins with the verb. So has confidence instead of just confident. All right, go ahead.
Is likely to be comfortable taking risks and mastering challenges. Takes the authority to make decisions and is undeterred by difficulties. So that's maybe a slight change there.
That
so
is.
Yeah. Undeterred by difficulties. Is not easily swayed by others, but is resolute and nonconformist. And then the last one is the same. So I just want to push pause for a moment. We can stay and talk more, but I want to honor that hour mark for people. Let's just talk briefly about our homework for next time. And if you could go down, I believe that is slide 16, maybe?
Oh, well, we're on slide 16 now, so.
19, sorry. It's very small. Okay, so homework. You're going to watch your pre-session 7 video, which is the facilitating interrupt. Again, I'll just reiterate, if you want to go back and watch the foundations course interrupt section, you're, of course, good idea, more than welcome. But the pre-session video will be on facilitating interrupt, and you'll see the RUTS worksheet. That'll be your homework. And then you'll watch the executing themes video. There's a link to it in the post. And I do really encourage you to connect with your accountability partners. So you're staying on course, you're excited about this, and you're getting that experience of discussing this, because it's one thing, and it's important to spend some time writing it and spending some internal time with it. Journaling is a great way to expand that and really apply that a little more, but it's another really important piece of the process to be able to discuss this with somebody. And then, from that becomes another step of application. So I'm just going to reiterate that. If you have any questions about that, reach out to us, of course. Adam and I will stay around and talk more. We can talk more about the influencing themes if you want to, but if you do need to go, I wanted to make sure we caught the homework review.
Yeah, good. Any questions? And you know what we might do too, Flynn? I think for like this, we could call this overtime period. We just have people type in their questions in the chat. So, because I think some people stick around to go, oh, if somebody has a question, I don't know what question they might have, I should stick around. But then if somebody listed all the questions ahead of time, I could go, oh, those questions suck, so I'm not going to stick around. No, I'm just kidding. But like, no, like those questions could be like, oh, that those don't apply to me. Or somebody who was going to go could be like, oh, that's a question that makes me interested. So that might be something we can do. Does that make sense, guys? Do you think that would be good? You don't really care? All right. Well, without further ado, what do you guys want to talk about, if anything?
Well, I would like to say something. There's a really nice resource that I particularly like called The Genius and Beauty of, I think it's Genius and Beauty of Talents, but it might be Strengths. And I can't remember if is it Strengths? I think it's really important. So even if you do experience, Rhonda, I think this was a great example. So you experience self-assurance in a way that really does bump up against some of your, it could be values, it could be talents. And that isn't necessarily true, but every person is going to have some of those other themes that will bump up against. So I think it's very, very important, especially if you're going to work with people. And Rhonda, you know this. You know this inside and out. But I'll just say this, that it's so important to learn how to celebrate each of these themes and really see the value of what a mature version of this can look like. So I really like that document. I can't remember if I put it up in the Talent to Strength resource. I might have just put a link to it. But I like that one because that document is the person who made that.
Chip Anderson, I think, is that? Yeah.
He's no longer with us, but he, it's just lovely language. And I think it helps kind of spend moments in how just, how wonderfully these themes show up. So I would highly encourage that because you're going to want, as you're working with people, they're going to want to jump to the problems that it causes, the contrast in their life. Yes, that's something important. You'll cover that too. But learning how to spend time really celebrating the people you're working with, because they're not seeing a lot of this in their own experience because it's so close to them. And the more you can be that mirror or that kind of saying, hey, I thought I'd turn that to silence. Sorry. I know I did that. The more you can be that sort of voice for them and kind of point out like, that was a really lovely use of your activator theme, or wow, I just love how you did that. It's just, I don't know, it's a really important piece of this personally for me to connect with people on, and part of this movement, part of why I think it's so good for people, it's a positive expression, and it's just so important to keep that central. So now questions, I kind of went off on a...
I like it. I like little soapboxes.
Soapboxes.
I have one or two.
That one's one of mine.
It's a good one. It's a worthwhile one, guys, because I mean, it's basically if they get so focused on regurgitating the negative mindset, the weakness-based mindset, and they're just going to constantly be looking for what's wrong. And it really is a fundamental difference. And I guess it's, now I'm on the soapbox, but I mean, it's like, this one's short. It's like, are you going to, if you, I know it's not everybody has the experience of playing rugby or football, but you got to imagine if you're running a running back and you're trying to score a touchdown, are you going to keep your eyes on the tacklers, or are you going to keep your eyes on the open space? And so if you're going to constantly be looking at where the tacklers are, then you're going to constantly be a very defensive runner. But if you're looking for where the holes are, then you're going to be someone who's moving towards that opportunity. And that's what we're saying is strengths-based philosophy is not looking for tacklers, it's looking for the openings. It's looking for the breakthroughs where you can go where other people can't. That's where you want to set yourself up. But if you're sitting there going, well, what's wrong with this theme and how do I repair it and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, these are your top themes. What would you do to your bottom themes? It's like, this is the stuff that's working well. So yeah, you got to kind of slap their hand. You got to be careful about how you do it, but you got to get them out of that mindset, because then otherwise you're just layering a positive psychology into a negative psychology machine. It's just, you're not gonna make a difference is the point, So yeah, you got to encourage them to own that strengths-based philosophy, and you got to own it yourself too, by the way. And it's hard to do. I know for me sometimes it's really hard. I got a lot of negative programming I got to overcome, and where I'm looking at the tacklers and not my openings. All right. That's my soapbox.
So just to kind of go back to where we were talking about self-assurance for just a minute, do you feel like that, like I tell you, I love people who are deliberative and analytical and responsibility. And those are at the very bottom for me. I don't get them, but I know I need them. Whereas the ones that are in the middle, and so what, for me, the ones that are making me a little nuts are 20, 21, 22, 23. For me, that's where my trouble spots are. And those are command, self-assurance, focus, and relator. So I don't see them as like they get on my nerves. You know, so we all have these, like you said before, everybody has a couple that make them insane.
Yep.
Mine happened to be 20, 21, 22, 23. It's like those right there.
Well, that would be interesting. And if I've never really heard that before, like it'd be cool to see if there is some kind of pattern like that for people. I don't know if there is. I'll go look at mine and see. But for me, I think that where you see it often the most, or at least where I kind of is in the behavior. So sometimes behaviors of certain themes can really bump up against or just be unclear. For me, a lot of times if I have to guess, I don't understand. And that behavior, I'm kind of like, why is this happening? The behaviors are those physical manifestations in a lot of cases. So I think that it would be worth kind of really looking into that. If you do see some of those patterns that are hard for you, and look at your top 5 and say, okay, well, what are the needs of mine that those patterns tend to not meet, or tend to just kind of like, what are the mismatches, which would be the environments, and that could mean relationships with certain people where those patterns of behavior are just not maybe all that great for me. Why might that be? So the mismatch of the theme anatomy could be a place to look. So, and this gets into kind of like some real deep dives and comparisons. But if you're looking at, Adam, could you actually bring that back up for 1 second?
Mm-hmm.
If Rhonda wanted to
Can you go to relator for a minute?
It's actually in a different set of slides, but
right.
I can pull it up.
I'll find it.
But while we're talking, so if you wanted to kind of examine, all right, so what are some of the behaviors? They work independently, they move forward in the face of uncertainty, they lead through example. Okay, maybe it's there, maybe it's not. But then if you go into mismatches, situations that do not provide a chance to challenge oneself, that are micromanaged by someone else, or involve people who are threatened by someone with confidence. So you kind of want to look at that. Like, is that person with self-assurance in a mismatch and therefore possibly in a rut? Or are they in a rut? Do they appear self-absorbed, entitled, cocky? Can they understate big challenges or overestimate your ability to handle them? You know, look at, is that person with self-assurance actually in a mismatch? Are they in a rut? And if that's happening, you might be seeing kind of the more unpleasant sides of the behaviors perhaps surface. And then if you know a person well, so here's where it can get kind of fun. If you know a person well with self-assurance or any of these themes, I'm just talking you through a process you would use. Think about, well, okay, so that person is really getting on my nerves for this, and this reason. And man, they're in a rut and I can see it plain as day, right? Well, take a step back, look at the matches, look at the enablers, and try to think of a time that person really was just shining and amazing and powerful, and you were just like, wow. And see what that might have been. Like, what were they in a completely different situation? Was that situation a much better match for them? Or the people that they were around? Were they feeling maybe in a life, transition point? Did they feel like they, were full steam ahead? That's kind of one of the reasons we did the icon with the boat, because, when self-assurance is on the boat, they're going to be like on a speedboat. And they're just like happy as can be. But if they can't be at the steering wheel, they might be trying to get to the place that's, at the steering wheel, and that might not be the most appropriate situation or match. So you can start to look at, so I'll reiterate the process again. 1, look at it for that person and kind of really dig into the theme anatomy and say, well, are their needs not being met, or do they not, where are they in this? And then take your theme anatomy and sort of set it against this and say, okay, why might this particular set of behaviors be bumping up against me so much? And you're going to find some fun answers, I think. So let's give another example. So relators would be, they need to feel a sense of trust, and trust can look very different for different relators. They typically, again, depending on what's in their top 5, they typically don't enjoy intensive social situations with a lot of strangers. Well, if you're a woo, taking a relator into that, you're not going to the woo is going to be like, this is so much fun. That situation is an absolute match, right? And the relator, it's an absolute mismatch. And so you're going to see behaviors show up in the relator that you might look like they're uncomfortable, they're not socializing perhaps, who knows? Again, it's all about the person. I'm generalizing to make a point. But the person with woo, and I have been that person, woo's very high for me, and I have a lot of relators in my life, and I'm like, come on, just, meet these strangers, it's so fun. And the relator's like, clearly suffering. Well, now I know why, right? That situation was a mismatch for them. I can identify that. Woo and relator is a super easy one to identify why they, because if we're looking at opposites, it could be. But again, we have someone in this class with both in their top 5. So that's
right. Cool. That's a very unusual.
But I've seen it before, and it's pretty interesting. So, I'm making this point because I really want you to experience a way you can dig into this resource and start to look at this in a way you could even help your clients if they're like, oh my gosh, my partner or my boss is doing this, and you happen to know their themes or can extrapolate enough to support them. It becomes language like this, and it becomes something they can process and do something with positively. So I'm going to stop there because I want to open it back up to more questions and comments. But I want you to have that ability and be able to really use this resource.
Good. Any other comments, questions, topics of interest? Then we shall leave it there and pick it up next week. If you need anything in the meantime, let us know. Until then, we will talk to you all later.
Thanks, everybody. Good to see you.
Thank you. It's good to see everyone. Have a great week.
You too.